We are live. This is the NBA Rundown. The channel is nukethehouse.com to get access to all my NBA plays. And today's guest, JC Zargo's NHL plays. Head on over to nukethehouse.com. Use that promo code NukeNovember. Get your first week free. JC, just before we start, first of all, thank you for joining us on
Of course.
Tyler couldn't make it today, so I appreciate you jumping in and talking some NBA with me. But before that, I see a hockey stick behind you, and I see that you're doing pretty well in the NHL this season. Talk to me about the handicapping you're doing for the NHL and one of the reasons you like handicapping the NHL.
Absolutely. Thanks, Fred. It's such a niche sport, and it's just such a spectacular sport, and most people don't realize it because, they don't know it, don't want to take the time to get into it, and I completely understand that. But man, it's just such an exciting sport. Once you understand it, what these guys are doing is so impressive. To do what they do on ice while, 250-pound men are trying to mow you over, it's exhilarating. It's great stuff. So it's really just my love of hockey. And once I kind of got into handicap, messing around with bets, I realized I'm pretty good at it. Definitely better than any other sport. There are just trends and things you can look for. Live betting is great because it's probably the easiest sport to detect momentum when you're talking about live betting. In NBA, sometimes the team is just toying with the team, and so it looks like they're hot, but the better team is going to come out. Hockey is very consistent, and that's what I like about it. There's very little, for whatever reason, there's no injuries in hockey, which is just crazy. But it just makes everything consistent, and I like that when betting, to not have to worry about so many factors.
I am jealous of you for not having handicap motivation, JC.
Yeah.
This is the NBA Rundown, and that's something that we're going to have to do tonight. And I am pulling things up right now. Okay.
Let me ask you a question, Fred, since we're talking about motivation. Yeah. You watch probably more basketball actually than anyone I know. But certainly enough to be able to answer this question. How are we feeling about the NBA Cup? Are you, number one, do you care? And more importantly, are you noticing teams, do they look different when playing those games?
As a fan, I think it's great.
Okay.
They need to do something to add to the regular season. They won't do what they really need to do, and that's shorten the season.
Mm-hmm.
As a bettor, I've struggled with it.
That Atlanta-Boston game was crazy.
Pardon?
That Atlanta-Boston game was crazy. Where Boston was favored by 15.
16. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just lost outright.
Yeah.
But do you notice, does it look like, do they play differently in those games?
Yes. There's two things I noticed. Number one, the teams are more motivated. So that's something to look for. And number two, and I've done it twice already, but I should not be playing unders in those things because point differential is the number one factor, but points scored is the number two factor. So both teams kind of have an incentive to run things up. Last Friday, we had 31 points in the final 3 minutes to lose that Wizards-Hawks under.
Wow.
And I knew it too. So I went against my own rules. It's my fault. But yeah, that's what's going on there. And we'll have more NBA Cup action tomorrow night. And I think Tyler will be back with me to break that down.
What do the ending of close games, do they look different in the Cup?
Most games, no.
That's what
there is more fouling just in general.
Interesting.
So, okay. So you were on the live show last night. Did you have any eyes on the NBA, and did you have any takeaways from last night's slate? Because it wasn't the best night for us. Unfortunately, I did watch a lot of it, and it was painful with some of the picks. For example, we gave out the Bulls. They got off to a slow start, and I kind of knew we were dead off that slow start. I felt that for us to get that cover, we needed to be competitive right off the bat. Then the Bulls pushed back. And Tyler and I were texting sometime in the third quarter, and we're like, yeah, that looks good. I think that Bulls pick's going to hit. Nope, it didn't. They fell apart towards the end. Like I said, however, when Milwaukee got off to that hot start, I was a little worried about it. did you see that game? And give me some other general thoughts, and I'll give you a couple more thoughts about what I saw last night.
Yeah, no, that the two games I was keeping closest eye on was the Bulls-Bucks as well as Memphis and the 76ers. That Bulls-Bucks game was just weird. I mean, like the Bucks, like they struggled with depth. And so, like, you know, they got ahead early, didn't really think much of it, actually waited, and I caught 10.5 instead of the 8.5. And so, like, they're down big at halftime. I'm thinking not a big deal, especially since, you know, the lack of depth has been the Bucks' downfall. I'm like, second half, perfect opportunity for the Bulls. They pulled in close, like, end of the third. I'm thinking, great. Like you said, this is great. This should be an easy cash. I sprinkled the money line, and that looks live. And then they just threw it away. Like, things just fell apart, and they just gave it away. So that was really disappointing to see. Memphis, man, they're a team that I'm forced to watch a lot because of my job. Not this job, my real job. And so I just can't get this team figured out. And so, you know, when they were up at halftime, I'm like, you know what, let's just fade them because that seems to be their MO, up big, lose in the second half. But no, they stayed strong the full game, which is just not really something we've seen out of Memphis. They're dealing with some bad injuries. And so I thought with 76ers getting Maxey back, they're probably live. But that's probably my biggest takeaway is as bad as the Grizzlies are, the 76ers, man, they are abysmal. Fox did point out last night, or no. Someone on the show pointed out last night that they're like 4 games out of a playoff spot. So, I mean, they're still in it. There's no reason to write them off. But I don't know. They look bad. I don't know what that franchise is going to do.
Yeah, you know, it'll be out on the site here at nukethehouse.com real soon. But in my favorite column of the week is This Week in Sports Betting. And the reason it's my favorite is that Holden doesn't give me a topic. I'm allowed to write about whatever I want. Last week, I did a scathing takedown of Inside the NBA and how they've contributed to the ratings going down, Clyde, by just basically bagging on anybody that does anything in a regular season game. And it doesn't matter. You didn't do it in the playoffs, right? Can you mention the NFL tried to do that for those who don't read the article? When Lamar Jackson had that great victory over Cincinnati last week, right, in one of the most exciting games of the year, did we go on to a couple of ex-players joking around, well, he sucks in the playoffs? Because let's be honest, Lamar Jackson sucks in the playoffs. No, they gave him credit, and we discussed what we had just saw. But this week, JC, I did a scathing takedown of the Philadelphia 76ers, and one of my ideas was that your team's personality comes from your team's leader, right? And indeed, right, and it's coming out a little more with this meeting that got leaked, right? They're not liking his work ethic or his accountability. And boy, I think that Paul George contract was a huge mistake.
Oh, I mean, how did everyone not know that was a huge mistake? That you're gonna take an injury-prone superstar and take him from one injury-prone location to another? Like, under no circumstances should anyone have thought that was a good idea.
I mean, it's almost like what they were thinking, because I think even the team has to know that last year when he's getting $60 million at age 37, that's going to be bad. I think they were thinking, though, just like kind of with the Los Angeles Rams, if we're crossing sports, hey, but if we get a title this year, it doesn't matter, right? And we're going all in right now. Embiid's still MVP caliber. However, I just don't think his body's going to hold up. And I also just don't think he has the personality. We talk about personalities on that team, and there's only one guy that seems to have the dog, and that's Tyrese Maxey. And I think the Sixers should turn the team over to him already. Now, I understand it's hard to give up a guy of Embiid's talent here, but boy, I just, with that degenerative knee condition, I just don't know if he's going to be able. I think it might be like Kawhi. I don't think we're ever going to get more than 50 games amount of regular season. I don't think we're ever going to see a healthy playoff run from him.
It's a really interesting point what you said, because no other sport criticizes guys like the NBA. And it's interesting because no regular season matters less than the NBA. And I think it's You got to shorten the schedule, or
I would argue that the baseball regular season is even more meaningless, and it's just because we see so many upsets every single year that all that really matters is getting hot in September. But you don't see the baseball announcers. I don't turn on MLB Network and them disparaging these regular season accomplishments of these players.
Here's the thing. So you are right in that baseball playoffs are just about who's hot when the playoffs roll around. But the field is small enough that you have to play hard in the regular season to get there. And that's the problem with the NBA. It's this massive field, and those bottom few teams have no business being in the playoffs. And so, like, once you get to a certain point in the season, it doesn't matter because seeding doesn't really matter. And there's so many slots that it's like you don't have...
JC. This is why it's just a huge myth. I think there's only one time in the past like 25 years that a team that was seeded less than third won the title.
Yeah, but I think that's more of a Curry LeBron problem, like they just...
this goes back years and years and years. I think the last team to do it was like Houston with Elijah.
Really?
It probably happened one time since then.
Sure, like either that Bucks year or
the Bucks were top 3 that year. I know they were because they had home.
Oh, the Warriors, their most recent title, weren't they?
Maybe that's the one.
Yeah.
That would be the one. But okay.
But again, the war, that's not even that big of a deal. But again, ultimately, it's this lack of parity in the NBA.
T-Matt says, I'm happy that Tyler's not forcing me straight into the games. But
I would be if we didn't have just a 4-game slate.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm happy you're indulging me today, JC. I'm trying to think the other games that we watched last night. Thunder Blazers. That was one of the few that I did get right. Thunder, they need Chet back. Hartenstein was back in the lineup last night. I want to see him in the starting lineup. I think he needs some more minutes.
He also got Rockets.
Rockets Pacers. We got that one right, except for the total, which looked fantastic, and those guys just ran through the roof towards the end of the game. All right, let's dive into tonight, JC, and maybe we'll even look ahead to tomorrow a little bit since I have you on here. But I only got tonight's lines up so far. The first game I want to talk about is the Detroit Pistons. They're -2. They're in Charlotte. They're taking on the Hornets. Now, I was going to be all over Charlotte, JC, but there's one thing on this injury report that has me worried, and that's the game time decision for Miles Bridges. And he got downgraded, so I think he might be out. Obviously, that's a hit to their defense, especially someone that I think could do a pretty good job against Cade. The total's gone under the last five times these teams have played each other. And Charlotte 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 at home. I'm going with the trends here, JC. I'm leaning towards Charlotte and the under in this game. What do you think?
On the side, tough to say. Charlotte, they played some tough games, so I'm not going to hold that against them as they host Detroit, who's just looked, they look like Detroit. Their team. How many years now have we been excited for Detroit next year?
Well, but here's the thing. I would say that they're actually improving this year.
They already got 7 wins, so absolutely.
Yeah. They have a nice mix of veterans, which I think is important because at a certain, development's great, but you can't develop 7 guys at the same time. It's nice to have people out there who know what they're doing. And I think that Tobias Harris is the reason that Tobias Harris is maligned is he's overpaid. It's not that he was like that bad a basketball player. It's just that he didn't really deserve that contract. If he was only getting $10 million a year and not eating up all that salary cap, I don't think people would be so dismissive of him. And Tim Hardaway, who I think will be out tonight, but he's also been a nice little improvement to that Detroit team. Hardaway is in tonight, but one of the Thompson twins will be out. Trey Mann is probable here, and both centers out for the Hornets. So, like I said, I like the Hornets in the under. However, if you were looking at props, JC, I would go with Jalen Duren. I would go with Jalen Duren tonight. And Charlotte's issue this year through injuries, not to team design, but they're missing their two centers, who I think are both actually above average players. So I also like Jalen Duren props there. I would go with a rebounding prop on Jalen Duren. Anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say it's ultimately I'd lean Charlotte. Just getting the 2.5 in what should be a close game, I think, is a pretty awesome opportunity. So I'm with you there. But I'm on the over.
Okay.
Charlotte, they play fast. They're high scoring. And Detroit just seems to keep pace with whoever they're playing. They have no real control over the flow of the game. But if Charlotte keeps it up tempo, they'll be right there with them. So I think we should sail over 221.5.
All right. My final point on this game, and this pushes me towards Charlotte as well. LaMelo Ball got benched in the last game for poor effort on defense. And I think he's young enough, and I think that this coach does have respect where I think it's going to be a positive. All right. Since Tyler's here and he wants me to take my time, let's go through the history of Charlotte. No, I'm just kidding. All right. The next game on our docket is the Minnesota Timberwolves minus 7.5 in Toronto, taking on the Raptors. Totals 224.5. JC, my numbers are pretty close, but I want to talk to you about this. I want to take Toronto for one reason. Do you know they're 19-1 straight up in the last 20 visits? Now, I know this trend takes forever, but I mean, for some reason, Minnesota doesn't do well when traveling up to Toronto. So I like the plus 7.5 here. And I see my guy, the top MF in the chat. He agrees with me as well. So I like taking the points here in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's way too many points. I mean, Toronto is 3-2, but I think the more telling stat here is they're 10-5 at the spread. Minnesota's 5-9 at the spread. So getting Toronto with that many points at home, always a great opportunity. Minnesota, they're not winning games by margin. They have some nice wins, but even those were close. So while they should win outright here, they might not. I don't know. You might sprinkle that plus 240 just because of what you said about Minnesota and Toronto. 7.5, easy number. I'll gladly jump on that with you.
I also like the overs here too. My numbers had it pretty close to the total, but total's gone over in 5 of Minnesota's last 6 games on the road, 8 of their last 11 games total, and gone over 11 of Toronto's last 12 home games. So,
yeah, I mean, the history between these two teams would not be favorable to you on the over, but yeah, given recent performances from both squads, I'd lean the over, but I just think I'm just going to take that 7.5 because I think it's such a beautiful bet.
All right. It looks like Toronto plus 7.5 is something that we will play. And I think I'm going to be on that over as well. An interesting one for us here, JC Zarga, the Utah Jazz. They take on the San Antonio Spurs. Now, let me see who's in the lineup here. So no Wemby, no Sohan, no Vassell. However, on the other side, there's no Walker Kessler. And Jordan Clarkson will most likely miss the game.
Oh, really? Doubtful.
I don't know what to do with this team, this Spurs team, JC. We faded San Antonio the other night when Wembanyama was out. And I came on the show and I said, the Spurs are -9, and this was at the time we had to adjust it. They're -9 without him on the floor. And they're going against the Thunder, who are an excellent team, right? And we just laid the lumber with the Thunder, laid 10 points. Not only did they not come close to covering, they didn't even win the game outright. So that's what kind of got me confused here. I would think to fade the Spurs without Wembanyama. However, that didn't work out for me too well last time.
But they kind of have a weird history with OKC.
Yeah.
Like that's the most understated rivalry maybe in sports. Just because
Really?
there's never any stakes. So like it's not really a true rivalry, but like when you look at the numbers between those two teams, it's always funky and weird stuff happens. And so that's just why I say that. Now the problem though, Utah's really bad too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm with you on how horrible San Antonio should be without Wemby, but I mean, Utah is just looked horrible on this road trip. You know, it's just a tough one. I'd probably give the nod to San Antonio since they're at home, but I don't love it. I'm not excited to bet it.
Yeah, I like Utah here. I'm just a little hesitant after trying to fade San Antonio last time and how
For sure.
well that came out to me. But if I had to play it, I would take the Jazz.
Oh, okay. Where's Tyler at on this one? Because I think you just got to get over that and go ahead and just take San Antonio because I mean at plus 2.5 we're not really talking. We're not that worried about the spread and Utah's 3-11. So what business do you really have betting on them to win?
Yeah. I guess that's a good point. Yeah, I don't. You know what's funny? I think Utah's players are better than they are as a team.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because
they have a nice squad
that overlap. Like Keontae George, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson all kind of do the same thing. You don't need three of those guys.
Tyler, I said Utah plus 2.5 at San Antonio. I figured you'd be on San Antonio. Because Fred just doesn't want to bet it because he's gun shy that he got screwed on the OKC game.
I kind of like the Jazz. All right. We'll move on, though. I don't think that the world's going to end, JC, if we fail to bet a game on November 21st between the Utah Jazz and the San Antonio Spurs. All right, JC. I'm sick to my stomach. I almost just want to end the show right now. Because my biggest edge of the whole day is the Los Angeles Lakers. And the only reason I could argue for the Magic is that the whole world's on the Lakers tonight, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like the whole world was on the Magic last night against the Clippers without Norman Powell. And the whole world's going to be on those Connect props. I don't even know how to say his name properly, Jason. But that's the only argument against it. It's the only argument against it is that everybody's on it, right? I mean, you can't actually make a basketball argument for it. I mean, he just came off 37, 15 plus is plus 140. I mean, I guess it'll be a little less scoring game because Orlando does play a lower pace, do have some better defenders. However, it just feels like it's too easy, JC. What do we do here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. You know, we both have a mutual disdain for the Lakers, but I mean, they've been playing really well recently. And while Orlando went on a nice little streak after Banchero went out, none of their wins were that impressive. And I hate to have to call the Lakers a good team, but right now they're certainly playing like it. And 5.5 just isn't enough points for me to seriously consider betting to the Magic. I was curious about some Anthony Black props because he's been tremendous off the bench since Banchero's been out. I mean, there's really anything relevant to that, but yeah, in that streak, he's been solid. But I'm not seeing anything posted yet, so that's something to be on the lookout for.
All right. Do we make this official? We're going to make the Lakers official, JC.
Yeah, I was just avoiding that question.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were muted again.
No. I'm curious to know what Tyler thinks, but yeah, I mean, it's of all the sides, it's definitely my second favorite.
All right. Well, give them your favorite side, and then we will wrap this up. What's your favorite bet for tonight?
It's got to be Toronto Raptors plus 7.5 at home.
All right. That is our free play for you guys today. Tomorrow, guys, we'll be back to discuss the NBA Cup. Should be a lot of fun, and we're going to get back on track with some winning picks tonight. So I'm going to give Tyler a call. Tyler, answer your phone, and we're going to put the official plays up real soon. JC, I appreciate you joining us on short notice, and give some words of wisdom for the people before we get out of here.
I walk slowly, but I never walk backwards.